It is early 1944. The sky over East Anglia is a flat, indifferent grey, a ceiling of wet wool that presses down on the airfields of the American 8th Air Force. At RAF Thorpe Abbotts, home of the 100th Bomb Group, the air smells of pulverized mud, high-octane aviation fuel, and coal smoke from the Nissen huts. It is 04:30. The ground is a treacherous geography of frost-slicked concrete and ankle-deep muck. The silence is heavy, broken only by the clank of a wrench on steel from the maintenance sheds and the distant hacking cough of a sentry. This is the normal world for the men who fly the B-17 Flying Fortress. Their routine is one of grim anticipation, a life measured in the 25 missions required to go home, a tour of duty that statistics prove is a mathematical impossibility for most. The base is a small, temporary city of corrugated iron and cold, populated by boys barely out of their teens, their faces etched with a fatigue that has nothing to do with lack of sleep. They move with a forced, brittle energy, their laughter too loud in the mess hall, their silences too profound in the briefing rooms. This is the calm before the storm, but the storm is the routine itself. Inside Hut 14, designated for the base's small operational research section, Dr. Aris Thorne stands at a window watching the ground crews readying the bombers. He is not aircrew. He is a civilian, a mathematician from MIT, seconded to the USAAF to find patterns in the chaos. He is 34, but his rumpled suit, thick glasses, and tendency to stare at his own shoes make him seem both older and entirely out of place. He holds a cup of weak, lukewarm tea, the liquid a poor defense against the damp that seeps through the thin walls. He is not watching the planes. He is watching the gaps between the planes. His job is not to measure the force of the offensive, but to calculate the precise, agonizing cost of its failure. He sees the forts not as chariots of liberation, but as data points in a catastrophic equation. The crews see him as an omen, the ghoul who counts the empty bunks and translates their lost friends into sterile percentages for a report bound for US Staff Headquarters. Thorne doesn't mind. He believes the numbers are the only things telling the truth. He turns from the window, back to the chalkboard that covers one wall. It is a mass of equations, charts, and grease pencil notations. Loss rates, sortie numbers, flak concentrations, fighter interception points. To the pilots, it is meaningless academic noise. To Thorne, it is a portrait of a failing system. The 8th Air Force is bleeding to death in the frozen daylight skies over Germany. The big week, the all-out assault on the Reich's aircraft industry, is imminent. General Doolittle is demanding maximum effort, but Thorne's numbers show that maximum effort will result in unsustainable losses. The German radar-guided defenses, the Würzburg fire control systems, and the Luftwaffe night fighter networks are too good. They are a precise technological scalpel, and the B-17 formations are a blunt instrument. As he sips the cold tea, Thorne notices a new speck of dust on his slide rule. He meticulously wipes it away. Something is wrong with the equation. Not his equation, but the war's. There is a variable missing. The hardstands are vibrating. The sound of 400 Wright R-1820 Cyclone engines warming up is not a roar. It is a physical pressure that shakes the fillings in a man's teeth. The first B-17s, painted with names like Rosie's Riveters and Hard Luck, begin their lumbering taxi toward the runway. Aris Thorne watches them go, his face impassive. He is counting. He knows, with a certainty that chills him more than the Norfolk fog, that at least 8 of them will not return. His charts prove it. He is trapped in a world of grim, predictable outcomes, a world where the only variable is which faces will be missing at the evening meal. He straightens his tie, a useless gesture in the cold hut. The normality of the loss is what he cannot accept. The light is changing, a bruised purple in the east. The first bomber lifts into the air, heavy with fuel and bombs, a dark cross against the dawn. Thorne's gaze lingers on it, then shifts to a small, captured piece of German radar equipment sitting on his desk, a Würzburg antenna component. It feels like an idol, a dark god demanding sacrifice. The machine is winning. Erich Thorne retreats to the stale air of the analysis hut, seeking refuge in his numbers. The bomber streams are now just plots on his map, crawling toward the Dutch coast. He focuses on his charts, the columns of figures representing aircraft dispatched versus aircraft returned. The gap between them is a canyon, and it is growing wider. The Schweinfurt and Regensburg raids of last October, Black Thursday, were not an anomaly. They were a warning. The force had lost 60 bombers on a single mission, 60 planes, 600 men. The brass had called it a valiant effort. Thorne's calculations called it a 22% loss rate. No military force in history could sustain such attrition. He reviews the pilot debriefs. His pencil hovering over the same repeated phrases. Flak was uncanny. They had us bracketed before we even saw the target. It was like they knew we were coming, every step of the way. They did know. The disruption comes not as a bang, but as a whisper. A British counterpart, an RAF liaison officer from Bomber Command's No. 100 group, sits across from Thorne, nursing his own cup of tea. He's a man named Copley, sharp-eyed and weary. He has been observing the Americans' daylight struggle with a kind of clinical pity. "You're chasing the wrong variable, Aris," Copley says quietly, pushing a thin manila folder across the desk. It's stamped, "Most Secret." "You're trying to build a better bomber. You should be trying to build a better ghost." Thorne opens it. Inside are after-action reports from Operation Gomorrah, the firebombing of Hamburg in July 1943. But the reports don't focus on the fire. They focus on the radar screens. The German radar network, the vaunted Kammhuber line, had been rendered completely blind. The reports describe German flak batteries firing wildly into empty sky, their Würzburg plotters screaming in confusion at a sky filled with thousands of phantom bombers. The cause, window, the code name for a staggeringly simple countermeasure. Bundles of aluminum strips cut to a specific length, 26 centimeters, to resonate with the 53-centimeter wavelength of the German Würzburg radar. When dropped from a bomber, these strips created a massive reflective cloud, an electrical storm that utterly swamped the radar screens. The British had used it. It had worked. It had worked perfectly. Thorne looks up, his mind racing. Hamburg was 7 months ago. The British proved it. "My God," Thorne whispers, "why aren't we using this? Now? Today?" Copley sips his tea. "Politics, old boy. The boomerang. High Command is terrified the moment we use it. The Hun will copy it. They fear it'll blind our own radar networks, the AI in our night fighters, the H-2S in our bombers. They'd rather take the losses than risk losing our advantage." Thorne feels a cold rush of anger, an unfamiliar emotion for him. It's not a technical problem, it's a human one. The men leaving Thorpe Abbott's this morning are flying into a precise radar-guided kill box, and a solution, a simple, cheap, effective solution, is sitting in a locked file, vetoed by a committee. He grips the edge of the report. The mystery is solved. It's not a missing variable in his equation. It's a failure of will. He looks at the clock, then at the map. The 100th is approaching the enemy coast. They are, at this exact moment, appearing as sharp, clear targets on a German radar screen. "They're afraid," Thorne says, the realization settling on him like a shroud. "They're sacrificing our crews because they are afraid of a shadow." Copley nods grimly. "That's the rub. And the Germans are also afraid. They have their own version, Duple. They aren't using it for the same reason. It's a radar paradox. Everyone is afraid to fire the first shot, What Thorne didn't know was that this statistical puzzle would pit him against the most powerful generals of the air war. The strategic problem facing the Allied air offensive in early 1944 is absolute. It is not a matter of courage or industrial might. It is a matter of physics and geography. The Third Reich is defended by the most sophisticated integrated air defense system ever conceived, the Kammhuber Line. Named for its architect, General Josef Kammhuber, it is a layered, overlapping net of detection and interception stretching from Denmark to the south of France. Its backbone is a chain of radar stations, designated Himmelbett, four-poster bed zones, each controlling a specific sector of the sky. Each 30 by 20-mile box is monitored by a Freya early warning radar, which detects incoming bomber streams from over 100 miles out. Once the bombers enter the box, a pair of Würzburg-Rees giant Würzburg radar dishes take over. These are precision instruments. One Würzburg tracks the lead bomber, the other tracks a dedicated night fighter. A ground controller then simply gives the fighter pilot vectors until his own airborne radar acquires the target. For the American daylight raids, the Würzburgs have a different, even more lethal purpose. They are linked directly to the Flak light Gerät, the fire control predictors for the Heavy 10, 5 cm and 12, 8 cm anti-aircraft batteries. The Würzburg provides a constant, real-time stream of data, the formation's altitude, speed and bearing. This information is fed into a complex mechanical computer, the Kommando Gerät, which calculates the precise ballistic solution, where to aim the guns so the shells intercept the bombers. The result is the flak box, a cube of sky pre-calculated for death. Pilots describe it as a solid wall of black, greasy smoke. A sky so thick with explosions you could walk on it. The accuracy is devastating. A single B-17 measuring 103 feet in wingspan is a 0.01% target in the vastness of the sky. But for the radar-guided 88mm shell, it is an absolute coordinate. The system is brutally efficient, a cold, mechanical expression of total war. The official reports from USS Staff Headquarters are written in dry, managerial prose that barely conceals the catastrophe. Report, 8th Air Force, 14 October 1943, Mission 115, Schweinfurt. 291 B-17s dispatched, 60 aircraft lost, 7 aircraft damaged beyond repair, 593 aircrew MIA, a further 121 aircraft sustained damage from enemy action. This is the language of an industrial process failing. The bomber mafia theory that tightly packed formations of B-17s could defend themselves is proven tragically false. The Luftwaffe's FW-190s and Bf-109s, vectored by the Himmelbett system, tear through the formations, while the radar-guided flak decimates those that remain. The cost is not just in machines, it is in the irreplaceable, highly trained 10-man crews. The USAF calculates it needs to train 30,000 new crewmen a month just to replace the losses. The point-blank directive, the order to destroy the German aircraft industry, is failing because the very tools of that destruction are being annihilated. Failed attempts to solve the problem litter the archives. Early electronic jammers, codenamed Carpet, are deployed, but they are too few and target the wrong frequencies. Evasive weaving maneuvers by the bomber formations only increase fuel consumption and throw off the bomber's own defensive fire. The only true solution, the P-51 Mustang fighter with its Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, is only just beginning to arrive in theatre. It cannot be everywhere at once. The strategic planners are facing a wall. They have the industrial might of America, the courage of the crews, and the imperative of the coming invasion of Europe, which cannot happen under a sky controlled by the Luftwaffe. But they are being defeated by an invisible enemy, by radio waves and logarithmic calculations. The Kammhuber Line is not just a defense, it is a mathematical proof that the daylight bombing campaign is impossible. The data points on Aris Thorne's charts are not numbers, they are ghosts. Each loss is a 10-man crew, A bull turret gunner, average age 19, frozen inside a plexiglass sphere at 25 feet, where the ambient temperature is 50 degrees Celsius. A navigator and a bombardier working at a small table in the nose, a fragile greenhouse of a compartment where a single 20mm cannon shell can, and does, turn them into a red mist. A pilot and co-pilot fighting the controls of a 30-ton aircraft that is shaking itself apart, one engine on fire, the intercom filled with the screams of the waste gunners. The human consequence of the Würzburg radar's efficiency is a very specific, very modern kind of industrial slaughter. The survivors who return to Thorpe Abbots are hollowed out. They are old men at 20. They suffer from epidemic combat fatigue, the 1,000-yard stare, and a superstitious terror that makes them carry lucky charms and perform small, desperate rituals before every flight. The physical toll is astronomical. Frostbite is a constant enemy. The men wear electrically heated suits, but these often short out, leaving them exposed to temperatures that freeze exposed skin in 60 seconds. The oxygen masks, their only lifeline in the thin air, freeze with their own condensed breath. The masks are rubbery and reek of stale air and fear. The noise is a constant deafening, bone-vibrating hell. It is not just the engines, it is the 50-caliber machine guns firing from the open waste positions, the concussive whoomp of flak shells exploding nearby, and the terrifying intimate sound of shrapnel, flak flechettes, ripping through the aluminum skin of the fuselage. The sound is described in debriefs as a handful of gravel thrown against a tin roof, a sound that means the sky is tearing the plane apart, piece by piece. The planes are unpressurized. Every man is fighting hypoxia, the insidious lack of oxygen that dulls the mind, slows reactions, and leads to fatal mistakes. The morale in the Nissen huts is fragile, brittle. The 25-mission tour is a dark joke. The average crewman's life expectancy is calculated at somewhere between 11 and 15 missions. Every man does the math. They know they are already dead. A diary excerpt from a fictional 100th Bomb Group navigator dated February 1944 reads, "Empty bunks again. Kelly's crew. We ate breakfast with them. Now their effects are being gathered in a sack. I found one of Kelly's socks under my cot. I can't bring myself to throw it away. I pretend not to see it. The flak was accurate." "Uncanny," the debriefer said. "It's not uncanny. It's a machine. We're just the grist. I don't know if I can do this again. I have to do this again." This is the reality that Thorne's window file promises to change. It is not an abstract statistical improvement. It is the difference between a 1 in 4 chance of survival and perhaps a 1 in 2. The hopelessness is pervasive. The crews have come to believe the German radar is supernatural, all-knowing. They are flying into a system designed to kill them, and it is working. The generals at High Wycombe and USS Staff Headquarters, for all their bluster about maximum effort, see the same numbers. They see the graph lines of production and attrition crossing in a way that spells doom for the entire strategic bombing campaign, and with it the plans for D-Day. The invasion cannot be launched if the Allies do not have air supremacy. They are losing that supremacy day by day to an invisible network of radio beams. The consensus in the field, echoed in the silent halls of command, was that the German radar network was, for all practical purposes, unbreakable. Experts agreed it couldn't be done. Erich Thorne is a man built of academic rigor and quiet dissatisfaction. Born in 1910 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, he is the son of a philosophy professor. He is 34 years old, thin and prone to headaches. He has lived his entire life in a world of pure reason. He took his doctorate at MIT in stochastic processes, the mathematics of random phenomena. He is, by nature, an observer. A man who believes that any problem, no matter how chaotic, can be rendered sensible through the application of sufficient data. He's not a soldier. He finds the entire military apparatus, the saluting, the rigid hierarchies, the elevation of intuition over evidence, to be profoundly inefficient. He was recruited in 1942 by the Office of Scientific Research and Development, OSRD, as part of a new, experimental generation of operational researchers. These boffins, as the British called them, were civilians tasked with applying scientific method to the messy business of warfare. His personality is one of meticulous, almost obsessive precision. He carries a Kuffeland Esser Model 4813 slide rule in a worn leather case on his belt, and his colleagues note that he polishes its glass with a handkerchief before every major calculation. He hates waste. It is this quality, more than patriotism, that drives him. The loss of a B-17 is to him a tragic failure of process. It is a 30-ton, $300,000 piece of advanced machinery carrying 10 highly trained specialists being defeated by a predictable system. He sees the air war as a massive, failing industrial plant, and he is the efficiency expert brought in to fix the production line. His mind does not traffic in glory or courage. It traffics in probabilities, distribution curves, and regression analysis. This detachment makes him a poor companion in the mess hall, but an invaluable analyst. He is the man who proved, statistically, that painting the RAF's night bombers black was useless, as they were almost always spotted from below against the slightly lighter sky. They were repainted a dull grey. He arrived in England in the winter of 1943, a man accustomed to steam-heated libraries and quiet common rooms, and was plunged into a world of mud, diesel fumes, and constant bone-chilling damp. The culture clash was immediate. The pilots, all swagger and fatalistic bravado, saw him as a creature from another planet. The commanders, men like the fictional Colonel Harding, were suspicious of his academic approach. They were men of action, men who trusted their gut, and they viewed Thorne's endless charts as a civilian distraction. "War is an art, Doctor," Harding had told him once, "not a formula." Thorne disagreed. War, he believed, was a system, and any system could be modelled, any system could be beaten. His PhD advisor at MIT had called him a man who would rather find the truth in a logarithm than in a headline. This quality now made him profoundly unsuited for military politics and uniquely qualified for the job. His background in stochastic processes is what allows him to see the window problem differently. The military brass sees a binary choice: use it and risk the boomerang, or don't use it and accept the losses. Thorne sees a complex time-dependent equation. He sees probabilities, not certainties. What is the probability of the Germans reverse engineering it? How fast can their industry adapt? What is the statistical impact of that adaptation versus the immediate, certain benefit of saving Allied crews? He is not an inventor. He is an analyst. He is the man who must quantify the unquantifiable, the value of a secret versus the value of a life. His entire life has been a preparation for this one, impossible calculation. He is the right man, in the right place, looking at the right problem, and he is about to become the most dangerous thing in the military, a subordinate who is provably correct. The window file burns on Aris Thorne's desk. It is a proven solution, yet it remains locked away. The crazy idea is not the invention of window itself. The British, specifically Joan Curran, had done that back in 1942. The crazy idea is Thorne's statistical argument that High Command's fear, the boomerang effect, is a statistical ghost, a failure of mathematical imagination. He takes the British data from the Hamburg raid and begins to build his own model. He works for 72 hours straight, fueled by bad tea and a cold fury. He factors in German industrial capacity, their known radar frequencies, the operational differences between their night defense system and the Allies' offensive airborne radar. His slide rule is a blur. His chalkboard becomes an impenetrable forest of symbols. Finally, he arrives at an answer. It is stark. It is, in its own way, beautiful. His calculations show two things. First, the immediate benefit of using window is astronomical. His model, based on the Hamburg data, projects a 60–70% reduction in losses to radar-guided flak and fighters. This isn't abstract. This is 40 or 50 fewer planes lost on a single large-scale raid. It's hundreds of men saved per week. Second, the boomerang risk is vastly overestimated. The British fear that Germany will copy it in 6 weeks is, in Thorne's analysis, irrelevant. His deep research into German communications, gleaned from ultra-intercepts he's not even supposed to have access to, suggests the Germans already have it. A British bomber carrying Window had crashed almost intact over the Netherlands months ago. The Germans know. The reason they aren't using their own version, Duple, is because they are caught in the exact same strategic paradox. They are terrified it will blind their superior Würzburg network and render them vulnerable. He requests a meeting with his superior, a hard-nosed USAAF colonel named Harding, the base's operations commander. Thorne lays out his charts in Harding's cold office, the walls of which are covered in tactical maps. Harding listens, his arms crossed, his face a mask of impatience. Thorne explains his model. "Colonel, the data is clear. We are sacrificing crews to protect a secret the enemy already possesses. They are not using it because they are more afraid of us than we are of them. It's a game of chicken, and we are the only ones swerving." Harding leans forward, his voice low. "Doctor, your math is elegant. I'm sure it will win you a prize back at MIT. But this is strategy, not a classroom. Air Marshal Harris himself, Bomber Harris, is convinced this window will blind every AI set in the RAF and bring the Blitz back to London. You're asking me to risk the entire British Isles based on a logarithm?" Thorne pushes his glasses up. "I'm asking you to trust the data. My model shows their offensive capability is blunted. Ours is ascending. The risk is asymmetrical. We must take it. We are losing this war, sir, one B-17 at a time. This equation saves them." Harding stands up, his chair scraping loudly on the wooden floor. He taps the charts. "This is the stupidest, most short-sighted, goddamned academic proposal I have ever heard. You're a civilian. You don't understand command responsibility. You're asking me to risk London to save a few crews. You're done. Get out of my office." Thorne gathers his papers, his hands steady, but his face pale. The meeting is a disaster. He has the answer, but the men in charge refuse to listen. He walks out into the mud and the noise of the airfield. He is defeated, but as he passes the signals workshop, he sees a young, cynical USAAF signals officer, Captain Jake Russo, tinkering with a captured Würzburg set. Thorne stops. If High Command won't listen to a calculation, perhaps they will listen to a demonstration. He decides in that moment to act. Thorne approaches Captain Russo, a man known for his brilliant technical mind and his profound disrespect for by-the-book procedures. Russo is 28, a radio engineer from Brooklyn, and he is the one who maintains the captured German radar set for the ORS. "Jake," Thorne says, his voice quiet but firm, "I need to borrow your Würzburg, and I need to borrow a C-47. Russo wipes grease from his hands, a smirk on his face. "Going somewhere, Doc? I thought you hated flying." Thorne lays out the file. "I need to prove the brass is wrong. I need to run a test, an unauthorized test." Russo's smirk vanishes as he reads the window report. He looks at the Würzburg set, then back at Thorne. This is window. I've heard rumors. The Brits won't let us touch it." Thorne nods. Harding just threw me out of his office for suggesting it, but his objection was based on a 6-week countermeasure estimate. I need to prove that's wrong. More than that, I need to show them what it looks like. Rousseau is quiet for a long moment. He's seen the crews go out. He's listened to the German flak command frequencies on his own receiver. He knows what the Würzburgs are doing. If we get caught, Rousseau says, I'm court-martialed and you're on the next boat home in disgrace. This is insane. Thorne adjusts his glasses. Is it more insane than losing 60 planes in a day when we have the solution in our back pocket? That's the argument that lands. Rousseau grins, a sudden, dangerous expression. All right, Doc. You get me the foil, I'll get you the plane. But we do this my way. Off the books. We'll log the C-47 as a navigational training exercise over the channel, far from the shipping lanes, far from our radar. The preparation begins in secret under the cover of night. They can't use official supply chains. Thorne and Rousseau requisition aluminum foil from the base's kitchens, and more effectively from a nearby RAF signals depot, trading American whiskey for 2 crates of window strips the British had packed away in storage. The setting is a remote, abandoned Nissen hut at the edge of the airfield, converted into Rousseau's private laboratory. The smell of solder, ozone, and damp metal hangs in the air. For 3 nights, they work. Thorne, the mathematician, becomes a factory worker, meticulously measuring and cutting the aluminum foil into precise 26 centimeter by 5 centimeter strips. Rousseau, meanwhile, calibrates the captured Würzburg. He has it aimed out to sea, powered by a grumbling mobile generator. He's established a secure radio link to a remote monitoring station, a modified ambulance truck, where a trusted sergeant will watch the radar screen. The tension is palpable. This is no longer a theoretical exercise. They are building the weapon themselves. They bundle the foil strips into packets weighted with cardboard, just as the British reports described. On the 4th night, the weather is perfect. Cold, clear, with a high ceiling. Rousseau has the C-47, its tanks full. The manifest is filed. He and Thorne load the heavy crates of foil themselves, disguised as radio equipment. They are joined by 2 of Rousseau's signals NCOs, men who would follow the captain anywhere. As they board the plane, the C-47's engines turning over, Rousseau claps Thorne on the shoulder. All right, Aris, time to see if your math can fly. If this doesn't work, we're not just in trouble. We're the idiots who wasted a ton of foil. Let's make sure your numbers are right. Thorne, his face pale in the moonlight, climbs into the cold, vibrating fuselage. He's never been more terrified in his life, or more certain. The C-47, call sign Vagrant, drones over the dark, freezing waters of the English Channel. They are 50 miles from the coast, in a dead zone of air traffic. Aris Thorne sits on a metal bench, clutching his slide rule in his pocket. He is a man of theory, now trapped in a world of vibration, noise, and gut-wrenching turbulence. Captain Rousseau is in the co-pilot's seat, guiding the plane into the designated test area. On the ground, in the ambulance parked on a lonely cliff, Rousseau's sergeant stares at the faint green circle of the captured Würzburg's cathode ray tube. "Vagrant, this is Searchlight. I have you..." The sergeant's voice crackles over the radio. "Solid contact, bearing 090, range 40 miles. You're a clean, beautiful blip." "All right. Doc," Rousseau yells over the engine noise. "It's your show." Thorne, his stomach lurching, gives the signal to the 2 NCOs. "First drop, standard bundle, mark." The 2 crewmen shove a single basketball-sized bundle of window out the open cargo door. It vanishes into the night. On the ground, the sergeant leans in. "Searchlight to Vagrant. I see. A flicker, a small echo. But I still have you, Vagrant. Solid contact. The target is clear. Whatever that was, it didn't do much." Thorne's heart sinks. He rechecks his notes. The Hamburg reports, the calculations. What did he miss? It's the dispersal, he realizes aloud. It's not dense enough. The report said clouds. We're dropping handfuls. He looks at Russo, his voice desperate. Jake, we have to bank, hard, and tell them to push all of it. The entire first crate. Now. Russo nods, trusting him. He banks the C-47 sharply, the plane groaning in protest. Vagrant to Searchlight. Stand by. We're coming around again. Get ready. In the fuselage, the NCOs wrestle the first wooden crate to the door. Now! Shove it all! Thorne yells. They kick the crate open, and a dense, shimmering cloud of aluminum strips erupts from the plane, tumbling into the slipstream. Thousands, then millions of tiny metal reflectors unfurl in the night air, blooming like a metallic flower in the radar's invisible beam. On the ground, the sergeant at the radar screen shouts into his microphone. He doesn't even use the call sign. My God! Aris! Jake! What did you do? The radio is filled with the sound of his shocked laughter. The screen! It's gone! It's just snow! A blizzard! It's pure white! I've lost you! I've lost everything! It looks like 1,000 bombers. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. In the C-47 there is silence. Thorne and Russo stare at each other. They can't see anything but the dark sky. But they know they just erased themselves from the most advanced targeting system on Earth. They are a ghost. Russo keys the mic, his voice shaking with awe. Searchlight, this is Vagrant. How's that for a logarithm? Thorne slumps against the bulkhead, his hands trembling. He has his proof. The equation worked. They had found a ghost in the machine. If stories like this, where a simple idea defeats a complex machine, fascinate you, stay with us. The next chapter of this wartime innovation, convincing the world, might surprise you even more. The successful test of window does not result in a celebration. It results in a summons. Colonel Harding is waiting for Thorne and Russo when they land, his face a storm cloud. He knows. The unauthorized flight, the radio chatter, the borrowed foil. They are marched into the main briefing room at 0600. It is not just Harding. Waiting for them, seated around the polished oak table, are 3 men whose uniforms glitter with stars. This is not a base-level meeting. This is a tribunal. General Meeker, a fictional composite of the hard-nosed commanders of the 8th Air Force, stares at them, his eyes like chips of ice. Dr. Thorne, Captain Russo. Meeker's voice is a low growl. You will explain, in detail, why you felt it appropriate to conduct an unauthorized signals experiment, risking priceless captured enemy equipment and an aircraft, in direct violation of USS staff and RAF standing orders. Russo, as the officer, begins to speak, but Thorne steps forward, holding a stack of photographic plates, pictures of the snowed-out radar screen. General, Thorne says, his voice quiet but carrying in the tense room. We did it because our losses are 8% and rising, and I have statistical proof that this can cut them by 2/3. We did it because the objection to its use is based on a false assumption. Meeker looks at the photos. He is unimpressed. The boomerang effect. We know window works, Doctor. The British proved that at Hamburg. That is not the variable in question. The variable is what happens next. The RAF estimates 6 weeks. 6 weeks from first use until the Luftwaffe is bombing London and Portsmouth, using our countermeasure to blind our coastal defence. 6 weeks until our H-2S and AI radar systems are useless. Your test is juvenile. It proves nothing we didn't already know. This is the moment. Thorne's defence. He is not a soldier. He is an academic, and this is his thesis defence. He places a second, thicker file on the table. General, your 6-week estimate is wrong. It's based on the assumption that the Germans are ignorant of the technology. They are not. He lays out his evidence. The ultra-intercepts. The report on the crashed British bomber. The analysis of German industrial bottlenecks. This is my report, sir. It proves two things. First, the Germans have had Duple, their version, for almost a year. The only reason they are not using it is because they too are terrified of the boomerang effect. They believe our radar network is superior, and they are desperate to protect their own Würzburg advantage. They are in the exact same state of paralysis as we are. He pauses, letting the implications sink in. The room is dead silent. Second, Thorne continues, his voice gaining strength, my calculations show that the strategic equation is asymmetrical. The German offensive capability, their bomber fleet, is a fraction of ours. Their defense, however, is crippling us. The side that uses this countermeasure first and en masse does not create a new problem. It solves the existing one. It forces the enemy to react, to retune thousands of radar sets, a process that will take months, not weeks. Months during which we will be pounding their factories with impunity. He looks directly at Mika. We are losing this war of attrition, sir. They have a shield. This is the weapon that breaks it. The question isn't, what if they copy us? The question is, how many more crews will we sacrifice for a secret the enemy already has? There is a long silence. Mika stares at Thorne. The general's face is unreadable. Finally, he nods, once. Doctor, your math is compelling. Captain Russo, you're grounded. You're also in charge of writing the new training manuals for chaff discharge. Dr. Thorne, you will report to my staff at High Wycombe. At 8:00, you've just become the busiest man in England. The transition from theory to practice is immediate and massive. The date is February 20th, 1944. It is the first day of Operation Argument, known to history as the Big Week. The strategic goal is the total annihilation of the German aircraft industry. Over 1,000 B-17s and B-24s are massed for the attack, an armada aimed at targets in Leipzig, Brunswick and Gotha. Aris Thorne is not on a plane. He is in the war room, a vast, smoke-filled underground chamber at USS Staff Headquarters. He is a small civilian figure in a sea of uniforms, watching the enormous map of Europe where WAF plotters move wooden blocks representing the bomber streams. General Mika is there, silent, watching the clock. Today, the 8th Air Force is rolling the dice, and they are betting everything on Thorne's equation. The script cuts to the cramped, freezing interior of a B-17 from the 100th Bomb Group, call sign Trigger Mortis. The plane is at 23, 0 feet over the Netherlands. The navigator's voice crackles on the intercom. Pilot, we are approaching the chaff point. 10 minutes. In the waist, 2 gunners, their faces covered by oxygen masks, unlock a small, purpose-built metal chute near the floor. Next to them are dozens of cardboard packets, the chaff bundles. Navigator to waist, the voice comes again. Stand by to chaff. Start the drop on my mark. 1 packet every 30 seconds. Maintain drop rate until bombs away. The crewmen nod, their breath fogging in the frigid air. They are terrified, but this is something new. They are not just targets today. They are fighting back in a new way. Mark! The first gunner shoves a packet into the chute. It's sucked out into the slipstream. He grabs another and another. All across the formation from 1,000 planes, the same action is happening. The sky begins to fill with a glittering, shimmering cloud of aluminum. It looks, as one pilot would later report, like a ticker-tape parade in hell. On the ground, in a German flak-light Stella near the Dutch border, the operators of a Würzburg Riese radar are screaming. Their screens, which moments before had shown a neat, orderly progression of blips, the bomber formation, are suddenly, instantaneously gone. They are replaced by an overwhelming blizzard of snow. a single massive advancing cloud that stretches for 50 miles. They cannot get a lock. They cannot distinguish a single B-17 from the noise. "It's 1,000 planes!" one operator shouts. "No, it's nothing. It's just Störung, jamming." The German flak batteries, deprived of their radar guidance, resort to firing blindly, putting up a barrage box in the general area of the cloud. The black puffs of smoke are still terrifying, but they are no longer the precise, surgical killers of the week before. The Luftwaffe fighters, scrambled by ground control, are vectored into the middle of the chaff cloud, finding only empty, foil-filled sky, while the bombers fly 10 feet above them. The results are immediate. The big week raids are a stunning success. The losses, which planners had feared might top 20%, are held to 5% on the first day. Over the entire week, 226 bombers are lost. A terrible number, but out of 800 sorties. It is a loss rate the USAF can sustain. The German fighter industry is crippled. Back in the war room, the loss reports are coming in. They are low, shockingly low. Mika looks at Thorne, who is quietly wiping his glasses. The general doesn't smile, he just nods once. "Prepare production estimates for the next 6 months, Doctor. Triple them." The equation had worked. The success of chaff on the big week is not a secret for long. It is a tactical revolution. From that day forward, no major Allied bombing raid, day or night, flies without it. The production of aluminum foil strips becomes a new priority industry. Factories in the United States and the United Kingdom, employing thousands of workers, are dedicated to doing nothing but cutting foil into 26-centimeter lengths and bundling it for the air forces. The scale is industrial. By 1945, the Allies are dropping thousands of tons of chaff per month over the Reich. It is, pound for pound, the most effective and cheapest countermeasure of the Second World War. It blinds the Würzburgs, confuses the Freyers, and sows chaos in the entire German air defense network. It saves, by conservative estimates from the post-war Strategic Bombing Survey, the lives of tens of thousands of Allied airmen. The German response is exactly what Aris Thorne's model had predicted. They are caught completely flat-footed, not by the technology, which they had, but by the sheer, audacious scale of its use. Hitler, upon learning that Duple, their version, had been known to his own researchers and withheld from use, flies into a rage. But it is too late. The Germans scramble to counter it. They develop new radar sets that operate on different microwave frequencies, Wurzlaus, but the industrial and technical effort under the constant rain of Allied bombs is too little, too late. The boomerang effect, the great fear of Allied high command, proves to be a strategic ghost. By the time the Germans have rudimentary chaff-resistant radar, the Allies have total air supremacy over Europe. The H-2S and AI radar systems are not compromised, as their microwave frequencies are largely immune to the foil strips. Thorne's asymmetrical equation was correct. The legacy of the boffins and operational researchers, like the composite Aris Thorne, is quiet, almost invisible. These are not men who receive the Medal of Honor. Their victories are not marked by captured territory, but by the negative space of charts, by the planes that did return, the crews that did complete their tours, the losses that did not happen. After the war, Aris Thorne's work is buried in classified reports, his name a footnote in a technical annex. He is offered a position at the newly formed RAND Corporation but declines. He returns to MIT, where he teaches probability theory to generations of engineering students who know him only as a quiet, exacting professor who is fussy about his tea and always carries a slide rule. They never know that a single equation he wrote in a cold Nissen hut in 1944 helped cripple the Luftwaffe and save thousands of lives by proving the power of a ghost. The principle of chaff did not end with the fall of Berlin. It became the foundation of all modern electronic warfare. Every stealth fighter, every guided missile, every naval vessel, every drone operating in a contested battle space is a direct descendant of those simple aluminum strips. The war of ghosts and signals, as Aris Thorne's team had called it, is now the primary domain of modern conflict. The concept is known as electronic countermeasures, ECM, a multi-billion-dollar industry dedicated to the simple idea of making a very expensive target look like a meaningless cloud of noise. The F-35 fighter jet, with its integrated sensor fusing and electronic attack capability, is simply Aris Thorne's equation rendered in carbon fiber and fly-by-wire. The low-tech, asymmetrical idea using physics to defeat a machine has proven more revolutionary than the machine itself. But the legacy is deeper than just technology. The chaff story is a parable about institutional fear. The impossible equation was not the one calculating radar wavelengths. It was the one calculating human bias. The true battle Aris Thorne fought was not against the Würzburg radar. It was against the entrenched, risk-averse certainty of his own high command. He proved that the greatest barrier to innovation is rarely the technical problem. It is the human failure to challenge consensus, to question the assumptions that declare a solution impossible because it carries a new, unfamiliar risk. The men who died before February 1944 were not just victims of German engineering. They were victims of a radar paradox, a failure of imagination that window finally shattered. The concrete hardstands of RAF Thorpe Abbots are quiet now. The wind moves through the empty, rusting skeletons of the Nissen huts, rattling the corrugated steel. They are silent witnesses, not just to the thunder of the B-17 engines, but to the quiet, desperate calculations that took place inside them. The war was won not only by the men who flew into the fire, but by the men who saw the unseen battlefield, the one made of radio waves, probabilities, and aluminum foil. The greatest barrier to innovation is rarely the technology itself. It is the human failure to imagine a new reality, to challenge the consensus that declares an idea impossible. Every great idea begins as an act of defiance against impossibility. What impossible ideas do you think could change the world?